Hello everyone and welcome back to our tutorial where we are learning basics about Vue.js. In this video, we'll be learning about a directive that is the bind directive. This directive is normally used to bind HTML properties to your DOM structure using any variables that you have created inside your script tag. Before we move forward, please do not forget to like, share and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Also press the bell icon so that you don't miss on any new notifications of any new videos or tutorials that we put forward. Now to bind any HTML properties, we would be using a directive called vbind as shown over here. So we would use this vbind and we would name the property that we want to bind of HTML over here. And here in equal to sign, we'll be mentioning the variable that is responsible for the value of that property. Now, this vbind is very common in Vue.js because you would be binding many HTML properties like disabled, CSS. For CSS you would be binding your class property and many more HTML properties that you would be binding. So Vue has also a shortened notification for vbind, so you can skip this vbind part of the syntax and just keep the colon and the property name as it is, as shown over here. So this will also help you in binding the properties. Now let's see this with an example. Hope you remember the form that we have created in the last video. Now to understand how we have done data binding to it, you can click on the eye icon on the top right corner and you can watch the video where we have done the two-way data binding in our last video. So over here, what we are trying to achieve is whenever this username and password fields, either of these two have some errors, we would disable this sign in button. And as soon as everything is passed, that means that these two fields are correct, then we would only remove the disabled property from the button. So for this, what I have done is I have created a computed property. Now this computed property is a new concept and we'll be discussing this in later part of our tutorial. So right now what we can just understand is I have just created one function which is returning true and false for us, and this function is responsible for checking if the form is valid or not. So this is just checking if we have to disable the button or not. So if this function returns true, that means the button has to be disabled. So this function I have binded and I have binded it on the button with button. So I have said that vbind disabled property and I have given the function name. Now if it would have been a normal function, then we would have to give a parenthesis over here, but this is a computed property, so we have skipped that part. Now if you see that if the email length is less than 2 or password length is less than 2, in that case the button would get disabled. So if you see, if this password is having a length of greater than 2 right now, but username has a length of 1, so in this case this button is disabled, so you are not able to click on the button. Now let's see if it is disabled, and we can see the disabled property over here in the button. Yes, we are able to see this. Now let's write some more characters in it, and now you can see that this button is now enabled and the mouse pointer itself also gets changed, and the property of disabled is also removed from the button itself. So this is how you can bind HTML properties in your DOM. Now you can also bind CSS. So let's understand how we can bind CSS in it. So to bind CSS, we have special syntaxes for CSS as well. So we have two type of CSS syntax that we can use. So let's go to the username field first, and now over here we will say let's say class. Now I have two classes that I want to bind, that is success and error. Let's first bind only the error part. So I say that so CSS class binding would be happening through two ways. Right now we are discussing using an object, and through object we will be using object type binding only when we have only one class to be assigned. We don't have a or else condition for a class. So if this condition passes, apply this class else apply this class. So we don't have a else condition. So like in this scenario, I'm saying that if the username is not correct, we would only apply a error class. We don't have a success class for it. So what we will say over here is apply the class error if model.email dot length is less than 2. So I have set this, and if you see this error class I have created over here in this section over here, which says that error will have a border color of red, and if it is focused, then I would not had this box shadow that was there, this blue shadow. So I've removed that shadow as well. So this I have applied as a class over here. Now the same we would apply on your password field as well. So let's go to password and we apply this on the password also and bind it for the password property. So you see these two fields are now in red color, highlighted in red, and as soon as they pass the condition, the error class gets removed and we don't have any class applied to it. So if you see in password, we don't have any class apart from the normal form control that is applied by the bootstrap. But in username, if you see for username, if you see, we would have an error class applied to it as well. So this is only one class that we want. Now if we have the alternate class also that we want, so then you can use the array syntax. So in this array we would say that model dot, let's say, password dot length is less than 2. In that scenario, apply error class, else apply success class. So this is an array where you can add any number of classes that you want, but they would be having an if and else condition. So this would have to be there. So over here, if you see, I have got the success class applied to the text box of password. So in password, I have success class. If I remove one more character, I get the error class over here. So this is the two type of CSS binding or the class binding that we are having in Vue.js. So this depends on your scenario. How do you want to use it? Now we also have HTML binding in Vue.js. So you can directly bind an HTML to your DOM structure. So to do that, you would be using the syntax over here that is displayed like v-html. I'll just highlight the syntax. So v-html, and we will bind it to a variable. Now let's see this with an example. Let's say I create a variable with name as html var, just for our understanding, and I give a span inside it. So let's create a span, and the span contains some text hi there. So I want to bind this to my HTML there. So what I'll do is, after the model, I'll create a div and I'll close the div as well. Now if we do HTML equal to, sorry, v hyphen HTML. So this is how we can bind an HTML to your DOM structure. Now you can see the span is not mentioned as it was in the text as well. But if you see inside the div, the complete span is there and it is binded. HTML binding has been taken place. So it has considered that text as HTML and it has binded it. So there can be scenarios where you say that I want to bind some dynamic HTML that I have in my JavaScript or the JS code. So you can go ahead and completely do it. Now, this is how we can do your binding of HTML properties. So you can have all property binding, like for a text box, you may want to bind the type also. You may have a list of elements that you want to display on your DOM, and now the type of that input tag is in the list itself. So you can do go ahead and you can try those things. And meanwhile, what I'll do is I'll share this code on my GitHub account, and you can download it for your reference in case you have any doubts. And That link of the GitHub account I'll be providing in the description of this video.
Thank you for watching the video. Please do not forget to like, share and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Also press the bell icon so that you don't miss on any notifications of any new videos or series that we put forward. We would love to hear from you of any feedbacks or any tutorial that you want us to do of any specific features of the language which we have put across, or any new language that you want us to make videos on. So we would appreciate if you can comment on the videos, and we would definitely reach out and look forward to answer your queries.